So I feel like every artist out there, whenever they're getting ready to start a project, draw a background, draw a character, or do any art of some sort, they usually have a routine that they start to kick up, right? Whenever you start, you might try to find some references right off the bat, or you might just scroll around Instagram, Pinterest, or even ArtStation just to start getting motivation, finding some stuff, maybe even some watch anime or read manga, just to find that part where they're like, oh, this is what I want to draw, this is where I want to start, let's get into it, right? And I feel like I've also gotten to this routine in this step-by-step process whenever I do my sketches that I follow pretty closely. I started to recognize this pattern whenever I started doing more sketches. I've been doing this challenge where I draw a sketch every single day for 100 days straight, and I might post a video on that, but for now, I have been drawing pretty consistently to the point where I've realized, hey, I do have a step-by-step process on how I fully draw characters out, and I thought, it might be a good time now out of all times to actually show my process, actually show how I draw characters and how I go about that process, because I feel like it's going to change very soon. And when it does eventually change, because I'm learning things, I'm studying stuff every single day, and steps eventually make alterations and adapt, I feel like it would be really good to have a copy of what I used to do and then compare and contrast and also mix and match the practices and the step-by-step process to improve even further. I feel like it just makes a lot of sense to jot down what you're going to do and what you did before. So with that in mind, I think it's time for me to show you my 7-step process on how I draw characters from start to finish. I hope you guys enjoy. Alright, welcome to my step-by-step guide on how I personally draw my own sketches. Now feel free to copy them, use this as a tutorial if you want to, though this is not the intention of the video. The intention of the video is not for me to teach anyone how to draw themselves. It is just a step-by-step process on how I like to draw, and if you would like to copy any of these, then feel free to do so. Just do not expect a tutorial out of this, alright? Cool. So the 7 steps are pretty simple. Step 1, preparations/reference. Step 2, the initial sketch. Step 3, the cleanup sketch. Step 4, the line art. Step 5, the detail. Step 6, color. And step 7, detail 2. All right, pretty simple. We're gonna start off with step 1, obviously. All right, so step 1, preparations and references. Now this step is very simple, but it is also the most important step in the entire process. I don't think I have to convince anyone that whenever you're doing a project or starting anything, you want to have a very solid plan and foundation so you can fall back upon whenever you get lost. But what you want to do is make sure a lot of things are dead set and a lot of things are set into stone, and the reason is because the more changes you want to do halfway through, the more likely you're going to mess up. To give an example, imagine if you're drawing a character that is initially supposed to be very happy and joyful. You find a pose for it, you find a color palette for it, and then halfway through you realize you yourself want to draw something sadder. You want to draw something more melancholic, depict a heavier emotion, and then you make changes to the face, but you already chose a happy emotion. So now you have a sad face matching a happy pose with a light color palette, but now you have to change both of them. What I'm trying to say is that the more changes you decide to make later on, the more likely it's going to cause a chain of changes that will have you rewriting the entire thing, and that you were better off from just starting over again. So what you want to do is make your decisions very clear here. Find the gender, find the emotion you want to visually depict to your audience, find solid references, find the pose, find everything you want to do, so later on when you have a mishap you can easily recover. Again, changes are okay halfway through. Don't get to the point where you're stuck in this entire one set dead set way. But I'm just saying you want to limit the amount of changes so you don't mess up everything and cause more visual clutter and confusion. Now, one of that process is finding references. That's part of preparations. And the reason why I want to make this entire category in this step was because references are extremely important, and you shouldn't feel bad for using them. References are super helpful when it comes to anything: poses, clothing, facial expressions, detail. There's just a lot of things, right? So you want to find a lot of references for many parts of the body of your character. A lot of people tend to just find one reference of the pose and then just kind of wing the other steps. But the reality is that if you find a pose you like and the reference isn't wearing the clothes you like, then you should find references for those clothes too, and then combine the references. If your character has an emotion that you find difficult drawing, then find a reference for that emotion: happy, smiling, sad, anything of the sort. And what I do personally is I also find a reference for the style that I want to draw. A lot of these references that I find are realistic photos, or just photos, or sometimes a style that I'm not used to. But I want to keep a reminder that my end goal is to draw something that looks like an anime drawing or a manga drawing. So it makes no sense for me to be looking only at references where it's realistic. So you want to kind of combine them, mix and match them, find a bit of a collage, and find a reference, and then you can intuitively connect them together and create one beautiful, wonderful collection of references that will aid you throughout the entire drawing. It's extremely important to find sources that allow you to draw as best as possible. So don't feel ashamed using references, and don't feel ashamed about using them a lot too. I mean, I have a problem where I think I have a dependency on references, and that's a problem I need to fix, but don't be afraid to use more of them, and make sure you go into more detail. And then once you're done with that, you're ready for step 2. Okay, so you have the preparations and references all figured out. Now it's time for you to go on to step 2 and do the initial sketch. And the reason why there are 2 steps to the sketch is because the first part of the sketching process is going to focus on one specific thing, the pose. Now I do add some hair and some eyes, but I mainly focus on the pose here, using a bunch of guidelines and trying to copy and getting the pose how I want it. And there are 2 reasons why. 1, the body is something that everything eventually lays on. The hair goes on the head, the eyes go on the eyes go on the head, and all of the clothes eventually lay on the body. If the body or the initial form isn't done very well, everything that lays on top of it can also look off. So you want the body to look very good. Use guidelines, be messy with it. Try to get as close to the form as possible so when you go into the later steps, it looks solid and will fit very well. And the second reason why I only focus on the pose and don't add anything else is visual clutter. I'm going to be using guidelines. The sketch is going to be a little bit messy. I don't need the canvas to be filled with other things that is distracting because I want to focus on the pose. The clothes change up the silhouette. The eyes might not be necessary at this moment. The accessories will just dangle off the body anyway, so there's no point. I want you to focus mainly on creating a very strong base for you, and then once you add stuff on later on in this cleanup sketch, it will look 100% better. So take that step first, initially draw the body out, and then you'll be ready for the next step. Okay, so now you're on step 3. You have the form, you have the pose, but it looks a little messy. So now we're gonna do the cleanup sketch. This is where you take the pose and just clean it up a little bit. Remove the sketchiness of it. Draw in longer strokes of lines. Make sure the form is very concise and very readable. Remove the guidelines even. You wanna now just simplify that form into something a lot more readable and a lot more straightforward. Then you're gonna finally add clothing, hair, eyes, and details if you haven't yet. And the reason why you want to do this now is because there's less visual clutter. You can now add a bunch of stuff without having it to be mixed up with a bunch of lines, mixed up with some guidelines, causing a huge chunk of confusion. It's so much easier now to just focus on the clothing because you did the pose so well. The body is already there. It's gonna stand still. It's gonna keep its place. And because the form is so structurally sound, the clothing that lays upon it is gonna add more to it. You're no longer going to be confused about, oh, the shoulder looks off because you spent a lot of time focusing on the pose. Draw the clothes now, add the accessories, make the detail as much as possible because when you get to the line art stage, you're going to be redrawing it in a much cleaner sense. So have some fun, add the rest of the accessories, go crazy with it, go crazy with the character design, and have the most fun. This is probably the most fun step out of the entire process because not only does it go from looking kind of messy to something really clean and really nice, and it feels like you're finally getting there, but it's also very satisfying to see your character finally come to life with all the choices and preparations you made from before. Okay, so you have completed the last step and now you're finally on line art, and this is where everything that you've worked on before finally pays off. In the last couple of steps, I told you to keep things clean and precise, and the reason is because you want things to be nice and looking already close to the finalized line art, so when you transfer it over, it transfers over seamlessly. Have you ever done line art and when you finished, the sketch kind of looks better, you kind of prefer it? Well, my theory is because sketching is already a style in of itself, and you already like the look of the sketching process, but the problem is that you're not trying to draw something sketchy. You want it to look clean and nice. Your character's not in motion, it's not a comic panel, the sketchiness isn't necessary. So when you try to do line art with a base of something that's really messy and sketchy, it doesn't transfer over very well. So through constant processes and multiple sketches of cleaning stuff up, making it look nicer and having things more straightforward, when you eventually transfer it over, it already looks nice and clean. And in the line art process, you can then stylize it by adding your own unique line weight and brushes. And that's where you finally take that reference, that style reference that I told you to take a while ago in the first step, where I told you to find something like an anime or manga reference, and then you add little details from that reference back onto your line art. This allows the drawing to finally differentiate itself from the sketch and into a fully finalized piece that's in your own unique style. This is where individuality comes from. Whenever you're doing your line art, anyone can sketch and have it look very good, but your line art, the way you do it, the details, the line weight, which ways you shade, how you do cross hatching, that is your own unique style. This is the step where you finally make it yours. Now, the step after this, which is just a detail step, is usually easier to explain if I just were to go into the software and show you myself. Detail is just stuff you didn't really think of during a sketch or that you wanted to add later on. So stuff like, you know, sweat droplets, a little drop here, some extra detail on the face, other stuff of that sort that adds in a little bit more detail. Usually I get this detail from manga panels I picked up. So if you look at Haiku's manga panels, I specifically picked one where they're sweating a lot. I notice how he, or the artist specifically, draws sweat. They usually do like a line and a little bump to the sweat. They sometimes add a lot of streaks to it. It's just little details that you want to find. You might add some like cross hatching on the eyes, cross hatching on the mouth. That's what I mean when I say detail step. This is a step where you just add those little things that just push your art a little bit more forward. All right, so have fun with that too, and then we're going to go into coloring. Alright, so on the final step of color, I'm going to have to confess that I will not be making any comments on this step. The reason being is that I don't know much about color. I went into my all drawings folder and I picked out, I could only find 6 drawings that I actually colored throughout my entire art time. 2 of them were from 8 months ago. One of them was from the beginning of the year where I didn't know anything, and the other ones were just practice sketches. I barely found anything, but I will try to offer you some advice. When you go into my description today, you will see a link about color values in the description. I push you to go watch that video, because that video explains how colors and their values work a lot, and how your color picker in your software probably isn't the best to determine what color you should be using. I recommend you going down there and checking it out, because it's all about your color values. So if you want anything about coloring, go down there. But all I just want to say is that I'm pretty happy with how my coloring came out. Even though I am happy with it, and I think it does look better than how I usually color, I'm not comfortable about explaining what I did. I don't really know for sure, and I don't really know the correct terminology to actually explain it to you, and I don't want to hinder your coloring process by giving you false information. But regardless of that, I hope you still enjoyed the video on my step-by-step process on how things worked out, how I play it out, and how my routine on actually drawing a character at all. If you do, please subscribe and also leave a like or leave a comment, because I love reading all of the comments. I genuinely do. I genuinely love going through and just seeing all the stuff that motivates me. You guys wishing me good luck, and also your wonderful critiques that you often give me. To prove it, here are 3 comments that you guys have left in the past. I do this every single time in a video, and I hope you guys really do enjoy it. Thank you guys, these 3, for so much of your support and so many others. I hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your day, and I hope you guys take good care. Stay hydrated, drink lots of water, and I'll see you guys some other time.